What do you get when you add Elden Ring, MS Paint, an Excel spreadsheet, and a YouTuber with way too much time on his hands? Well, you get this video. Today we're going to be doing an experiment, and it's something I've done for other games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Breath of the Wild, The Witcher 3, Skyrim, all sorts of open world games that I find their worlds to be relatively compelling. And the premise is pretty simple at its core. So back in late 2017, a documentary was made on the development of The Witcher 3 and specifically how they designed the open world. It's a no-clip documentary called Designing the World of The Witcher 3. Phenomenal. Highly recommend you check it out. Truly fantastic. And in the video, some of the designers discuss how they made the world feel dense enough to be interesting, but also large enough and with enough room to breathe that it didn't feel oppressive or like it was just a collectathon. And this is something we as gamers, I think, take for granted a lot of the time. We just play through an open world game and assume that it's balanced because it is. We don't pay attention to the minutia of it, but a lot of the time there are very strict rules, guidelines, and techniques that the developers have used to create these worlds and make them feel alive and interesting to boot. The team that put together The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt used something they called internally the 40-second rule. And it's very simple to understand, but to explain it quickly and efficiently, I'm going to use the greatest tool given to man since fire. That is, of course, MS Paint. I know it's 2022. This is the best we got, people. Deal with it. We're going with it. So the premise is pretty simple. The player character can only travel a set distance within 40 seconds or so. Let's represent that distance with this line. Let's say this is just running on the ground freely as Geralt, no horse or mount. That'll complicate things a little bit, but for basic demonstration purposes, this line represents how far you can run in 40 seconds. The 40-second rule of open world game design is pretty simple. All it says is that within this travel time or in this distance, you should hit something interesting that diverts your attention, pulls you away, in effect, something that's going to try to distract you from where you're going. A great way to demonstrate this would be, for instance, if you have destination A and destination B and you're traveling between these two places, if something interesting pops up, it should try to divert you away from that objective. If you're just trying to run somewhere, something should happen that's interesting enough that your attention gets pulled off. And you'll notice this in all sorts of open world games where you're trying to just run somewhere, but you keep getting distracted. That's what this is. Game designers want that to happen because it makes the world feel more alive and more interesting, because instead of just running from point A to point B, you're actually doing more things as you travel. It's about the journey, not just the destination, right? And how game designers will use this is they will take that 40-second travel distance, draw a circle around the starting point, and try to place things along the circumference of the circle. So for example, if we start at location X right here, that's where the player is standing when we're designing the world. This is where we assume he's gonna be. If we then go and draw out that distance, say 30 seconds, we can travel this far. We want to make sure that no matter which direction we travel, something interesting will happen. And the way we can demonstrate that is with a circle. The whole premise of this, though, is that along the circumference of this circle, we should have something interesting that diverts the player's attention scattered along it. And if this is roughly 40 seconds, I don't know if this is exactly the distance you could run in 40 seconds, maybe close, maybe it needs to be bigger, I'm not sure. But you could see that along the circle, there are things very closely placed within that range. In reality, 40 seconds might be closer to this, in which case you can see exactly how this type of thing lines up from the fulcrum point in the middle, where you have caves scattered around treasure, you have combat encounters close by, fast travel posts, you have herbs that you can collect, all sorts of things that are placed along the circumference of this circle. So within 40 seconds of exploring, something new will happen. Now, I've tested this with a bunch of different games. Most of them tend to follow 30 to 40 seconds, especially the games that are really good and have compelling open world. Breath of the Wild, Skyrim, The Witcher 3 all fall into this range of roughly 30 to 40 seconds in between moments of interest. A game like Red Dead Redemption 2, on the other hand, stretched it all the way to 80 seconds between moments of interest that diverted your attention, which encouraged the same feeling of the world being huge and also very desolate and empty, considering it was very wild and open in that map. But that worked with that game and that setting, so it was okay. But the latest open world game to release that's kind of captivated the the audience's hearts and minds is Elden Ring. And it was the first real foray into a full-fledged open world for FromSoft, at least in any meaningful sense. You could say Sekiro was sort of open-ended, you could go different places, but it was still very linear in terms of design. This is full open world, explore to your heart's content, do whatever you want. And it's fantastic, for the record. So I did what any well-adjusted YouTuber does. I pulled out an Excel spreadsheet and a stopwatch and got to work. For the record, this is really subjective, okay? Like, I'm not trying to claim that this is some sort of scientific objective study with irrefutable results, okay? This is my results after my own experience and my gameplay. Your results may vary. I don't know why you'd want to do this yourself. I don't know why I do it either, other than that some of you guys find it really interesting. But for the record, these are very subjective results. That being said, how this worked is that I played through Elden Ring for a set period of time, about 5 to 6 hours, roughly speaking. And during that time, I wasn't trying to hunt down bosses. I wasn't trying to follow the guiding light to get through the main story. I was focused on exploration, okay? Unadulterated, purely free exploration. And then what I did is I watched back through the recording, and every time something diverted my attention away, I would stop the time and record how long it had been since the last thing pulled my attention away from just exploring. And then after that encounter was done, after I had collected whatever object or dealt with the enemy, or if it was a boss after I had killed the boss or got fed up with it, I then restarted the timer once I began exploring again, and I stopped the timer when I found something else that was interesting. And that's basically how this worked. I timed it out and narrowed everything down to a collection of roughly 223 individual entries and moments of interest over the course of this like 5.75 hour session. So then what I did is I put all of the times in between moments of interest into a spreadsheet, into one column. I labeled each event in order that it occurred, and then I charted it. And then I ran a regression analysis and ended up with this lovely spreadsheet right here. I love it when we have a hypothesis, specifically that a good open world tends to float around 40 seconds in between moments of interest, and then we test it and it ends up being confirmed. That's exactly what happened here. You can see the times were spread out and it ends up looking quite random in between most moments of interest, ranging anywhere from like 7-8 seconds between things that pulled my interest. Maybe it was an item and then I round the corner, look around, and I find an enemy close by. Could be something like that. Or these big stretches of like 80 seconds where it was just a big open field and I'm just writing and taking in the views, looking up at the vistas, and perhaps my attention is not specifically on finding things on the ground or anything, but it's just taking in the world and the beauty that they've created here. But this is all about trends. Individual instances aren't that important. It's about the average, because that tells us roughly what the actual distance is on a rolling average across the world itself. Because in some areas, the time will be less because it's more narrow. In other areas, it'll be much more spread out because the areas are really open. It's the average that we care about. And sure enough, the average comes out to roughly 37.18 seconds in between events of interest that divert your attention, which is exactly what we would predict if this game was adhering to the 40-second rule of open world games, which is that in pretty much every game I've ever tested that has a compelling and interesting open world, they fall into this guideline. Whether it's Fallout New Vegas, Skyrim, The Witcher 3, they're all in this realm, and there's a reason for it. It's because this is what players find captivating and interesting and compelling, and this is what drives them to keep exploring. For whatever reason, our little monkey brains are just trained to really want to continue exploring when there's something interesting every 30 to 40 seconds. If there's too much time in between moments of interest, we kind of daze off and lose focus and we find it boring and empty. And if it's too tightly packed together, we sort of get overwhelmed and it feels too much like a video game and it doesn't feel like an actual world worth exploring. All of these other stats aren't particularly important for us. I mean, we can look at the standard error, the coefficients, p-values, t-stats, f-values, what the percentile of each output was, what the standard residuals were. For an experiment, quote unquote, like this, those numbers are not really useful because, I mean, again, this isn't like a scientific thing. This is just a YouTuber with a stopwatch and a spreadsheet going through and trying to find out roughly how much time is between moments of interest. And so in that pursuit, I think it's pretty compelling. At least I think it is. I mean, I think it is. I think it is. But that's about it. I mean, we would predict that Elden Ring, being a compelling open world game, would have things spaced out roughly about 40 seconds, because that's what most compelling, interesting open worlds have it spaced out at. And sure enough, when we test it, that's what we see. What you do with that information, I think, is up to you, but I think it's cool. It's one of those things. It's one of those things like, what's the point of this video? I don't know. I don't know what you do with this info. I don't know how this makes your life any better. It definitely didn't make my life better sifting through like 6 hours of footage. But you know what? If you found this video interesting and compelling in any sort of way, make sure to hit the like button so that I feel like this wasn't just a total waste of time. Maybe if you find it really, really interesting, subscribe, ring the notification bell to get notified of new videos when they come out. I do have a critique of Ghost of Tsushima coming out in parts every Monday for the next month or so. Those will be hitting live on the channel, so make sure to subscribe to see those. First one goes up Monday. It's gonna be a good one. And as always, if you want to see videos like this get created live, or if you want to just hang out, head over to the Twitch stream. Links in the link tree in the description box below. We'd love to have you over there, and it's very likely that I will be live the moment that this video goes live, so come by and say hi. We'd love to hang out and see you. Not creepy, I'm just saying I would like to see you. I'd like to see you in the chat. I'm not good at this. I'll see you over on Twitch. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Again, smash the like button. It actually does help. It makes a huge difference on how these videos perform, whether they get pushed out to other people. So if you liked it, again, really helps a lot. Hit the like button. That's it from me. Thank you for watching. I love you all very, very much. I appreciate you. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.